This is yet another passage from CAT 2025 Part 2. So I will just read it in between. I will be explaining and then we will get into the questions. All right. Time and again, whenever a population of Mexican tetrafish was swept into cave and survived long enough for natural selection to have its way, the ice disappeared. Interesting, right? Interesting. But it's not that everything has been lost in cavefish. Many enhancements have also happened. So we will just pause here for a while and look at the picture. And what if I'll tell you that this fish is not having an eye? This fish is not having an eye. Fish is blind. And this is which fish? This is Mexican tetra fish. It is found in Mexico, and this species is kind of special because it is not having eyes. And why it is not having eyes? Initially, it used to live in freshwater environment where it used to have eyes, but some of the population from some of the population moved to cave environment, which is a subterranean environment, which is very challenging to survive, and thus occur natural selection, and in this natural selection, we all know, right? It is coming from Darwin, Origin of Species. So most of us must have read ample amount of things about natural selection. So in the process of this natural selection, it was a regressive evolution for this particular species, and they end up losing their eyes. But wait, that's not all. There are certain enhancements as well. There were certain enhancements. So there, like, what are these enhancements that we will read? Studies have found that cave-dwelling fish can detect lower levels of amino acids. So this is first enhancement. We all know that amino acids are building blocks of proteins. So these fishes have this ability to detect lower level of amino acids than surface fish. तो जो मछली सरफेस पे तैरेगी उससे इनकी एबिलिटी ज्यादा है ये अमीनो एसिड्स डिटेक्ट करने की. They also have more taste buds and higher density of sensitive cells alongside their body that let them sense water pressure and flow. तो ये सारी enhancements है. टेस्ट बर्ड्स आ गई. टेस्ट बर्ड्स ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग है इनकी सरफेस फिश से, राइट? एंड दे कैन ऑल्सो सेंस water pressure and flow using the cells which are alongside their body. This is kind of a compensation, you can say, right? They are not having eyes, so they would probably use these cells to detect pressure and the flow, which direction the water is flowing, and what kind of pressure, water pressure is there. Because in caves, there will be like water pressure and the flow sometimes might change, right? So they need to detect that also because they have to survive in such environment. So these important takeaway, these are the three enhancements. And first thing which I have said that in the process of natural selection, these species, when they moved from their natural environment to cave environment, they over the years they lost their eyes, and this was the regressive evolution, right? Now, when I say regressive evolution, in some animals there is progressive evolution also, that they develop certain features, just like the tree we have read, and some of the animals they lose certain features of them to be able to survive and reproduce in that environment, right? Killing the processes that support the formation of eye is quite literally what happens. Just like non-cave dwelling members of the species, all cavefish embryos start making eyes, but after a few hours, cells in the developing eye start dying until the entire structure has disappeared. Very interesting. This is the developmental phase, early developmental phase. Developmental biologists mystery. So they have mentioned the person. who probably has said this. So earlier, both non-cave dwelling fishes and cave fishes, they have eyes in embryo to start with, but in few hours, cave fishes particularly, they lose the eye cell starts dying, and then the organ totally disappears. Now this is interesting. Evolution itself is not like an engineer to design something new, but it just modifies it, right? And Riddle thinks this apparent inefficiency may be unavoidable. The early development of brain and eye are completely intertwined. They happen together, she says. So this lady Riddle is a scientist, right? A biologist and a scientist, we can say, particularly dealing with developmental biology, and maybe conducting research on particularly on cave fishes, because this sounds very fascinating, right? A fish living in cave and kind of not having eyes, right? So most of us might have not even heard about such that such species can exist. So this is what and the way it is, it has been described as evolution itself, as I've mentioned, is not creating something new, but it is, whatever is the existing structure, it is just modifying out of it. And why it is not starting with not having an eye itself in fish. Like both the fishes are having eyes, right? So if at all, they were not to have eye at the very beginning, then the brain development will also be affected. This is what I think. So this is the reason they have eyes initially, and later in few hours the eye cells may disappear. This is my thinking that इसीलिए होता होगा कि ब्रेन और आंख की जो डेवलपमेंट है वो साथ में होती है. तो अगर आंख नहीं दी, आंख से नहीं शुरुआत की, मतलब शुरुआत से ही अगर आंख नहीं है, तो ब्रेन डेवलपमेंट में भी कुछ इश्यू हो जाएगा, बिकॉज उन्होंने बोला है दोनों चीजें इंटरट्वाइंड है, राइट? तो ज्यादा हम लोग उसमें नहीं और ज्यादा उसमें नहीं हम लोग डाइव करते हैं. We will just move ahead, right? That means least disruptive way for eyelessness to evolve, maybe to start making an eye and then get rid of it. Okay. It is easy to see why cavefish would be at disadvantage if they were to maintain the expensive tissues they aren't using. Right? So, for maintaining a tissue, you need to spend certain resources, probably the nutrition that you are getting from your food chain or your food that you consume. So, if they were to not use eye, right, right, in case it will be totally dark, so they will not be light. So they will not be using eyes. They can't see. I mean, even if they have eyes, they cannot see. So thus, instead of spending their resources on eyes, they get rid of it. This is the explanation. Since relatively little light or grows in their cave, the fish are likely surviving on meager diet, mostly bad pieces and organic waste that washes in during the rainy season. Now this is about their diet, so it is meager, very less quantity and seasonal availability of food, and lacking nutrition probably is what we can say. Lacking nutrition. Bad pieces and organic waste is what they have available during the rainy season. Researchers keeping cavefish in labs have discovered that genetically the creatures are explicitly adapted to absorbing and storing nutrients. Right. So this is yet another enhancement, so they can absorb, cave fishes can absorb and store nutrients. This is yet another genetic modification in this fish, or the genetic ability that they have within them. Right? The fats can be toxic for tissues. Evolutionary physiologist Nicholas Donner explained. So they are stored in fat cells. But when these cells get too big, they can burst, which is why We often see chronic inflammation in humans and other animals that have stored a lot of fat in their tissues. This is usual, biology and evolutionary physiology. We can say that fats are toxic if you have you must have heard doctors making this claim that if you keep on accumulating fats, depositing fats, then you will probably get obese, and then you will start developing inflammation. Then all sorts of diseases will insidiously, insidiously start progressing in your body. So this is talking about inflammation and normal physiology. Yet, a 2020 study by Ronner, Krishnan, and their colleagues revealed that very well-fed cavefish had fewer signs of inflammation. But cavefish का ऐसा नहीं है, right? Fat होने के बावजूद they will not have any signs of inflammation. So inflammation नहीं होगा in their fat tissues than surface fishes do. Even in their sparse cave conditions, wild cave fishes can sometimes get very fat phase reading, right? Even if the conditions are sparse, so they get very fat sometimes. कभी कभी बहुत fat हो जाती है ये fish. This is presumably because whenever food ends up in the cave, the fish eat as much as possible. जब भी food available होता है तो ये लोग relentlessly these fishes will eat and thus they will get fat. Since there may be nothing else for a long time to come, intriguingly, Riddle says their fat is usually bright yellow because of the high levels of carotenoids, the substance in carrots that your grandmother used to tell you were good for your eyes. So now it is coming to the carotenoids and the yellow color fat deposit which is found in these species. And the Riddle is saying that there might be some the yellow fat might be because of the high levels of carotenoids. So she's trying to establish the link probably, and then the grandmother reference, which usually we are all aware that you should eat carrots, high level of vitamin A. Everybody knows that, right? The first thing that came to our mind, of course, was that they were accumulating these because they don't have eyes. So says Riedel. So Riedel says because they don't have eyes, they might be accumulating carotenoids. In this species, such ideas can be tested. Scientists can cross surface fish with eyes and cavefish without eyes and look at what their offsprings are like. So ये जो thought आया Riedel को, he tasted it in this species they have these scientists have tasted now उसके साथ कई और साइंटिस्ट होंगे उन्होंने ये आइडिया टेस्ट किया कैसे क्रॉस ब्रीड किया आइस जो जो सरफेस फिश थी आंखों के साथ वाली और जो केव फिश थी जो अंधी केव फिश है जिनकी आंखें नहीं है प्रोबेबली उनको क्रॉस ब्रीड किया और उनके जो ऑफस्प्रिंग्स थे उनसे इन्होंने कंक्लूड करना चाहा कि ये जो लिंक है कैरोटेनॉइड्स आंखें नहीं होना और येलो कलर इसके बीच कोई लिंक है क्या इस्टेब्लिश कर सकते हैं क्या इसके लिए ऐसा एक एक्सपेरिमेंट किया when that's done Riedel says researchers see no link between eye presence or size and accumulation of carotenoids. This is very important, right? Some eyeless cavefish had fat that was particularly white, so results were opposite to the hypothesis that Riedel put forth, and because some eyeless cavefish had uh, had fat that was particularly white color fat was there, lower level of carotenoid. So they can't conclude, right? So the results were opposite to their hypothesis. Instead, Riddle thinks these carotenoids may be another adaptation to suppress inflammation, which might be important in the wild as cavefish are likely overeating whenever food arrives. Right? Right. So now, since the first claim is denied, uh, denied by the results that they have received from the experiment. There is another claim that this high carotenoid level may be to suppress the inflammation because in certain season, in rainy season, the food is available and they will relentlessly keep on eating. So this is what this passage is about. Very fascinating, very interesting, and I love reading this passage. And I I keep on, I kept on uh, finding more information, and I got to know that uh, eel was found in Mumbai, Jogeshwari. There is a there is a school for blind. So there is a well, and in that well they found a eel, which was surprisingly it was this eel was also not having eyes. So this is what you can also check in Google and figure out. And then Meghalaya Ministry of Fishery and Government of India, they have a joint panar fishes. Panar fishes are also cave fishes, named after the probably 3 to 4 years, or the Mumbai one is very recently, I can say. And Meghalaya, I think it was there in 2019 or maybe 2020 was the year, right? So I'm not pretty sure about the year, so you can get into the details. So passage, I believe you have understood what it is. And now we will get into the question, or shall we, I will give you a day. You can get into the questions, and if you have any doubts, you can. Tomorrow, probably, we'll have another session. Okay. Okay. So let's just go with the seventh question. All of the following statements from the passage describe adaptation in Mexican tetra crayfish, except. So all of the statements will support or will talk about or will describe adaptation in Mexican tetrafish, except one statement. So we have to find out that statement. Since relatively little the fish are likely surviving on meager diet, this is talking about crayfish and the adaptation, right? It is it's easy to see crayfish would be at disadvantage if they were to maintain expensive issues that they aren't using. This is again about crayfish and their losing of ice, right? Even in fast condition, cave condition wild fishes can sometimes get very fat. This is also about cavefish and the adaptation that sometimes they get fat, store food, absorb and store nutrients. But when these cells get option B, when these cells get too big, they can burst, which is why we often see chronic inflammation in humans and other animals that have stored a lot of fat in their tissues. Now, here there is nothing about cavefish. It is talking about general biology, about humans and other animals, and how fats result in chronic inflammation. So, this option is an exception, and it is not describing adaptation in Mexican tetra cavefish. So, I have marked it, right? Next one, which one of the following best explains why apparent inefficiency is unavoidable? Mexican tetra cavefish are similar to non-cave dwelling variants in their early stages of development. The inefficiency resulting from eyelessness is compensated by enhancements like more taste buds in Mexican tetra cave. I don't think this one is correct. The lack of light in the cave kills the eyes. No, no, no. Uh, it was never, there was nothing about light as such in the passage, right? The caves have poor and inconsistent availability of food and nutrition for Mexican tetrafish. Now, this will come in picture once the fish will start, the later phase, right? These fishes, the apparent inefficiency that they are talking about, is losing eye. losing I, and this is an apparent efficiency which is unavoidable. And why it is unavoidable? Why it is unavoidable? Because the brain and I are developed together, right? So evolution, uh, while while in that developmental phase, they lose their eyes in few hours. This is what it has been told. So it is talking about early stages of development. So I think this option is correct, right? All other options are not right. Talking about apparent, either apparent efficiency or the unavoidable nature of it, right? So this one is correct, right? Like both the fishes are having uh, eye in the initial stage, but in few hours they lose it. Which one of the following results for cross between surface fish and cave fish would invalidate Riddle's inference from the experiment? So this is the correct one, right? If this would have been the result, Riddle could have concluded that there is a link between yellow fat and eyelessness, right? If only eyeless offspring had yellow fat, then only he would have been able to conclude such hypothesis. But it doesn't happen because he discovered that some eyeless offspring also had white fat, right? And all these results could have been there as well, right? Because random results were there. There was not particular result from which he can conclude. On the basis of information in the passage, what is most likely function of carotenoids in Mexican catfish? Now, this one, right? In the end, Riedel tried establishing a link between the anti-inflammatory properties of carotenoids, and because of this anti-inflammatory properties of carotenoids, Mexican tetra fishes might be storing more carotenoids because they eat more during certain season, and because of eating more, they have these fat deposits, and to to protect themselves from the inflammation, they probably have this carotenoid deposits, right? So this was it. I believe it was not that difficult, and you guys have enjoyed it. So I will